Good evening. Welcome to Hellhound's Loathsome Lore, episode 31, as part of the Late Night Spookshow here in the Horror Metal channel. I'm Hellhound, of course, and we're going to look at a few more of my most recent purchases. I got a lot of cool stuff lately, including a new kitty, as you can see. Let's start with the action figure update. So, does anybody remember these guys? The Food Fighters. They came out in the late 80s, and these were some of my favorite toys when I was a kid, you know, even next to my Ninja Turtles and Transformers. I just freaking love these guys. They should have made it into a cartoon. So anyway, I saw that somebody was selling them on eBay for a relatively reasonable price, so I was like, hell with it, I'll go ahead and order them. You know, the nostalgia is real. I'm a nostalgia junkie, and brings back some good memories, because I had a lot of fun with these guys when I was a kid, so I figured it'd be cool to own again. So yeah, there's 9 of them there. I actually have another one coming in the mail. The ice cream cone character, Sergeant Scoop. Yeah, he's on his way here, and then I'll have all 10 of them. Except for the rare versions of already existing characters. But yeah, there's the Food Fighters. Yeah, if anybody remembers these guys, let me know, because they seem to be relatively forgotten. Alright, so let's look at more action figures. Yeah, there's Frankenstein's monster, Pinhead, and Ghostface. I think I showed Pinhead in an earlier Loathsome Lore video, but I didn't have him holding onto the puzzle box, and I didn't have those weapons hanging off of his gown, so I don't know, I figured I'd show it again. Yeah, there's 2 Eddies and Vic Rattlehead, the mascot of Iron Maiden and the mascot of Megadeth. Yeah, there's all the slasher villains. All the Jasons in front. They're supposed to be coming out with a Part 7, New Blood Jason. It's supposed to come out this month. They pushed it back several times. It's originally supposed to come out in like May. They pushed it out, but I still don't see it in stores, and I don't see it on their website available to purchase. And it's unfortunate, because I've been looking forward to that one. That's my favorite look that Jason's ever had, so I was thrilled when they announced it, but I don't know, it's not available yet, so I don't know, I wish they'd cough it up already. Yeah, there's He-Man, Leonardo from the Ninja Turtles, Peter Venkman, and Darth Vader. And, okay, I've showed all the rest of these guys in past videos, all the superheroes and supervillains from Marvel and DC. So, alright, so let's go and look at the other stuff I got. Okay, so I've got quite a bit of CDs lately. I actually thought I was kind of done with CDs. I didn't think I'd really buy very many more like this often, but because I pretty much switched to vinyl. But I actually got back into CDs, and now I think they're definitely worth having. I already had a massive CD collection to begin with, and now I have even more. So let's go and take a look. Okay, so I have every Black Sabbath album now, as of a few weeks ago. I had all the Ozzy and Dio albums. I had Born Again with Ian Gillan. I had most of the live albums, a couple greatest hits albums. So now, yeah, I have Seventh Star, which was technically supposed to be a Tony Iommi solo album, but they forced him to put the Black Sabbath name on it. It's the first and only album with singer Glenn Hughes from Deep Purple. This came out right after Born Again, which had Ian Gillan also from Deep Purple. Yeah, a lot of weird connections between Black Sabbath and Deep Purple, you know, and then of course there's Richie Blackmore, who formed Rainbow with Ronnie James Dio, who also sang for Sabbath, but that's another story. Anyway, yeah, Seventh Star, not a terrible album. I'm surprised to see how many people bash it, but I actually like it. Glenn Hughes is a great singer, and I really like the title track. That's just actually one of my favorite Sabbath songs, so yeah, I definitely recommend checking this one out. Then there's The Eternal Idol, which was the first album to feature vocalist Tony Martin, who's probably the most underrated Black Sabbath vocalist, because, you know, of course everybody knows about Ozzy and Dio, and then everybody knows about Ian Gillan and Glenn Hughes from other bands, most notably Deep Purple. Not many people talk about Tony Martin, and he's freaking awesome. He has a great voice. He kind of sounds like Dio a little bit, a very powerful voice. I love this album. I think the best song is the first track, The Shining. That is an awesome song. Yeah, Tony Martin is an amazing singer and does not get the credit that he deserves. Then there's Headless Cross, their second album with Tony Martin. Another great album, for sure. I highly recommend it. Tear by Black Sabbath, their third with Tony Martin. Also a very, very great recording. Check it out. Then after that, Tony Martin left, and Ronnie James Dio and Vinny Appice came back, and they recorded Dehumanizer, which is another amazing Black Sabbath album, and one of my favorite records featuring the talents of the late, great Ronnie James Dio. But then after that album, him and Vinny left again, and Tony Martin returned to the band, and they recorded Cross Purposes, another amazing album. And then there's Forbidden from 1995, their last with Tony Martin. A lot of people hate this album. I don't think it's downright terrible. It is one of the weaker ones. It's definitely my least favorite of the Tony Martin era. But I don't think Black Sabbath has a downright awful album. They don't have a Saint Anger or a Super Collider or a Elude Divinum Insanus. You know, I even kind of like Take the Legacy and Never Say Die. They're weaker, but they're not god-awful. There's a few decent tracks, and they're not totally unlistenable. And this one's no exception. I actually think there's a few good songs on this. I think the fact that Ice-T is the guest vocalist on the first song, a lot of people want to bash it for that reason, but it's not quite as bad as everybody says. Though still, it's one of their weaker releases. And that's it for Black Sabbath for the studio albums. I also recently got this deluxe edition of Paranoid. The reason I got this is because it has 2 discs, and on the second disc, they have different versions of the tracks. Most of them are instrumentals, but Paranoid has alternate lyrics, which is like an early version of the song. I'm pretty sure Ozzy wrote the prototype of the song. And then Planet Caravan, which also has alternate lyrics, most likely written by Ozzy, before Geezer rewrote them and made them better. And Ozzy doesn't use a Leslie speaker on this version of Planet Caravan, and I think it sounds better. He could really sing those slow, kind of sad, woeful, haunting songs very well. I don't think they need to distort his voice. So yeah, that's why I bought this version of the album, which I already had, because it has those bonus tracks, and they're freaking awesome. And then I got the deluxe edition of Mob Rules, because Disc 2 is actually the Live with the Hammersmith Odeon recording, which I've wanted for years, and I'm still kicking myself for not buying the vinyl when I had the chance, because now it's like really hard to find and really expensive if you do find it. So I already had this album. I got it on CD and vinyl. Now I have this deluxe edition, which has Live the Hammersmith Odeon as Disc 2, which I kind of prefer to Live Evil in some ways. I like the way Dio sings in IB better on this than I do in Live Evil. It also has Country Girl, which wasn't on Live Evil either. Alright, so next we have The X Factor with Iron Maiden. This is the first album with singer Blaze Bayley after Bruce Dickinson left. He eventually came back, of course. So this is the first of 2 albums with singer Blaze Bayley. I don't hate Blaze Bayley as much as everybody else does. I used to not be able to stand him, but he's actually a decent singer. He just has like a lower register than Bruce, but his vibrato is still pretty decent. And this isn't a terrible album either. I think it is a little underrated. It's not as good as like Maiden's best work, but it doesn't deserve all the hate. I think Look for the Truth and The Aftermath are pretty good songs. Some people say that Blaze Bayley overdoes it with the but Bruce Dickinson did that too. I think they're both good at it, and I like it when both of them do it. But I do agree with most people that say these songs would have sounded better with Dickinson singing them, but, you know, whatever. I still think it's decent. I think it's far better than the next one, Virtual 11, which I still don't have and don't really care to. But anyway, yeah, speaking of Bruce Dickinson, during his time away from the band, he had quite a interesting solo career. I have this album of his, Accident of Birth, which is pretty darn good. This is my favorite of his solo albums, and I definitely recommend it. You should definitely check it out, because it's really, really good. Bruce Dickinson, Accident of Birth. It's the only solo album I have by him. Speaking of solo albums, I also have these by Rob Halford, Resurrection and Crucible. This is a really great CD. It actually has a track that Bruce Dickinson does guest vocals on, track 6, The One You Love to Hate. That is an awesome song. It's really cool hearing Halford and Dickinson sing together. Crucible is not quite as good, but it has its moments. Either way, Halford has a great solo career. He's my favorite vocalist of all time, so if you're a fan of Judas Priest and Rob Halford in general, check these out. Next we have Dead Again by Merciful Fate. Long Live the King, King Diamond that is. Now the only Merciful Fate albums I don't have are Into the Unknown and Time. Dead Again. Great album by a great band. Check it out. Next we have the self-titled debut by new wave of British heavy metal band Angel Wish. Lead guitarist and lead singer Kevin Hayborn, I think, is a very underrated guitar player. His riffs and solos are very memorable, and this debut is just simply iconic. It's a must-have for traditional heavy metal fans. It's just excellent. I really love the title track, Angel Witch. I love Atlantis, White Witch. They're all pretty damn good. Some people have a problem with Kevin Hayborn's voice. I think he's a decent singer. You know, he's obviously more of a guitarist and probably just did the vocals because he couldn't find anybody else. But sometimes it gets a little grating. It kind of a whiny voice. You know, it's very, very high pitched. But I like his singing. I think he's pretty good. So yeah, their debut album is great, and it's very sad that they seem to want to. Kevin Hayborn seems to want to pretend that their second album, Screaming and Bleeding, doesn't exist. This album is phenomenal. I love it. It's not quite as iconic or memorable as their debut, but I think it's very underrated. You can't find this on Spotify because, like I said, Kevin Hayborn seems to want to pretend this doesn't exist. Even if you read the booklet in this release of this CD, he says that this was a mistake and it shouldn't have been made. I couldn't disagree more. I don't know what the deal is. Kevin Hayborn returned on guitar, but this time he recruited Dave Tatum to do the vocals. What an underrated singer. Hardly anybody even knows about him. He was an amazing singer. You can tell that he was probably more trained, and he's more of an actual vocalist than Kevin Hayborn was. I love his voice. He's a lot lower and has like a deeper register than Kevin Hayborn. Kind of borders on baritone a little bit. He does do some higher notes here and there, but he's a much better singer than Kevin Hayborn. I wish they would have done more with him. He only appeared on the next album, Frontal Assault, which I don't have. But yeah, very underrated vocalist, and it's really sad that these two albums with him on it seem to be forgotten. What's Dave Tatum doing now? Did he just vanish off the face of the earth? I heard he was doing like a bluesy southern rock band. But I really wish he'd return to metal, because this album's freaking awesome. I think it's almost just as good as their more well-known debut. Screaming and Bleeding. Check it out. The first track on it, Who's to Blame, is one of my favorite metal songs ever. Dave Tatum's voice kind of reminds me of somebody, maybe one of the Misfits singers, or maybe Peter Steele, or the singer from 69 Eyes. He sounds like somebody, but it's damn good. He's a great voice. I wish we'd done more with the band. Because now Kevin Hayborn's back to singing in addition to guitar playing. Ugh. Next we have Power Metal by Pantera. It's their first release with singer Phil Anselmo, and it's another album that the band seems to want to forget even exists. They don't acknowledge it, and they kind of disowned it. Their first three albums before they got Phil were a little too glam metal for my taste, but I think this one is really, really good, and it's very underrated. Phil Anselmo sounds like Rob Halford mixed with Jeff Tate here. He hits those high notes like it's nobody's business, and this is my favorite vocal performance of his, but where he kind of just did the typical, like, tough guy, voice, you know, the growls. He did hit some high notes on their next album, Cowboys from Hell, which is known as their official debut album, but he had a way better voice here, and I wish he would have continued to sing that way, because he sounds awesome. And Dimebag's guitar playing is top-notch as well, and he even does lead vocals on the last track, PST 88, and he has a decent voice as well. He was kind of a sounds like a thrash vocalist, but anyway, underrated album. Check it out. Don't overlook it just because the band itself did for so many years. Power Metal by Pantera. Phil Anselmo's finest vocal performance with this band. Next we have a few thrash metal albums that I probably should have already owned. We have Zombie Attack by Tankard. And does that cover look familiar to you? That's because it's the same artwork for this Creature Features movie guide, which I've had for several years. Yeah, it's the same exact painting. Pretty cool picture. But in any case, it was a great album. Pretty good thrash metal album. They don't take themselves as seriously. They're part of the Teutonic Big Four of thrash. I think they're definitely the Anthrax of the Teutonic Big Four. The German thrash metal bands. Yeah, they don't take themselves too seriously. Their lyrics are more tongue-in-cheek. They sing about horror movies and pizza and beer and just partying, and, you know, they have a great sense of humor, and very fun album. Maybe not their best, but I think it definitely has its place in thrash metal history, for sure. I think it's kind of an overlooked gem. Speaking of thrash metal, Epidemic of Violence by Demolition Hammer. I don't know why I waited so long to have this in my collection. This album freaking slays. My good buddy Dr. Guts, this is one of his favorite bands, and I I always heard them and I always liked them, and I don't know why I never owned one of their albums, but I finally do now, and this is one of the best thrash metal albums I ever heard. It's fast, it's heavy, it's aggressive, it's brutal, it almost borders on death metal a little bit. It is really freaking violent and awesome. I love this band, and this is a great, great album. It's too bad they only have 3 studio albums, the third of which wasn't really that great, only because they didn't even want to release it under the Demolition Hammer name. The record label forced them to, I guess. But anyway, we still have this great thrash record, and I hope that they do more in the future, because they're amazing. Next we have yet another thrash metal album, the debut of the band Violence, Eternal Nightmare. I think this is their first. I think it's still their best. Sean Killian's vocals took a while to grow on me. I didn't really care for his voice at first. I think he kind of held him back, but now it's I kind of dig it. I couldn't picture anybody else singing on this record. He's more of a glorified punk vocalist. He doesn't really have a thrash metal voice, but let's face it, not very many thrash metal singers are that technically gifted anyway. They don't have like a wide range or anything. But yeah, it's grown on me, and I think this is a fantastic record. You know, Rob Flynn on guitar, he would leave to form Machine Head, and it's a shame because I kind of wish he would have done more with this band. And I used to wish they had a different singer, but again, now I can't imagine this album without Sean Killian, though he did really get on my nerves at first. Kind of a whiny, punk-sounding voice, but I think it fits thrash metal pretty well. It makes them unique, and this is a great record. I still recommend it. Then we have Ignorance by Sacred Reich. Another pretty good thrash metal album. I think this is their best album, and I'll even go so far to say this is the only album of theirs I consider truly great. Yeah, some great, really heavy, really aggressive riffs, pretty kick-ass vocals and drum beats. Check it out. I don't think they were able to capture this sort of magic again after this one. I think they peaked with their first album. Then we have Let There Be Blood by Exodus. I know. It was pointless to re-record this thrash metal masterpiece with the late and great Paul Bailoff. I don't hate Rob Dukes like everybody else does. Okay, let's face it, Paul Bailoff and Steve Souza, as awesome as they are, neither one of them have like a great technical singing voice. They don't have a wide range. There's not a lot they can do with their singing. Yeah, Rob Dukes' voice is a little reminiscent of most nu metal vocalists. It's just the aggressive tough guy thing yet again. And it's not really that interesting. It's just kind of generic. But I don't dislike him. I think his albums with Exodus definitely have their place in the band's history. It was pretty pointless to re-record this, but I got this for very cheap. It was like $3, so I figured, yeah, why the hell not? I love these songs, so it's kind of interesting to hear a different version of them, even though it's not the same lineup. You know, Paul Bailoff is sadly no longer with us. And a lot of people think this is an insult to his memory, but I think it's more like a tribute, you know. They knew that they couldn't replace this masterpiece, and I don't think they really tried. I think it's worth listening to. Yeah, it's definitely an inferior version of this, but what can I say? Again, it was very cheap, and I figured it'd just be cool to have both of them, because it's like different versions of the same album. I like those songs. It's interesting to hear somebody else singing them. Next we have the debut album by Massacre. Great death metal band, but I think this is their only great album. Their next album, Promise, is one of the worst albums I've ever heard. It's right up there with Saint Anger. But this one's pretty damn good, you know? It's like lots of members that were in Death. In fact, all these guys were in an early version of Death, and a few of them would play on later Death albums, like Leprosy and stuff. This came out in 1991, after Leprosy. But, yeah, it has Terry Butler on bass, Rick Ross on guitar, Bill Andrews on drums, all members of Death, and Cam Lee on vocals. And he was actually in an early incarnation of Death as well. He played drums and did the vocals back when the band was called Mantis. And I think even after they changed their name to Death for a while, before he left and Chuck Schuldiner took over as vocalist. And the rest is history. This is their best release, and pretty much the only one that I think is really worth listening to. Back From Beyond is okay, and I haven't heard their newest one yet. I don't even know if it's out at this point, but this album is awesome. One of my favorite death metal albums of all time. Promise sucked. Considered Dead by Gorguts, another pretty great death metal album. Yeah, I really love this band. I think this is one of their best works as well. Some people say it's a little generic, but I think it's fine. Their next album might have been their best work, but this one's still pretty damn good. I've been wanting this for years. It was a little hard to find there for a while. So I'm glad they released this special edition digipack or whatever back in 2016, because I've been wanting it for years, and now I finally have it. Great death metal album. Next we have Grom and Satanica by blackened death metal band Behemoth. I think they mix black and death metal better than anybody else, and I saw them in concert a few years ago. They put on a phenomenal show. Behemoth is awesome, and I don't know why it took me so long to get one of their albums. Both of them are good. Grom, their second album, is a little more typical black metal, just straight up black metal, and they do a damn good job of it. There's a few things here that separate from other black metal bands. There's some clean vocals, there's some female vocals, kind of makes it unique. I really like it though. And Satanica is when they really started to become more death metal. This is their fourth album, and the one before that experimented with their new sound a little bit, but this is the one where they really came into their own and mixed black and death metal very, very well. Nurgle and Company did a great job here, and again, they put on a great concert. I hope to see them again someday. This is a great album. Okay, so now, as for Blu-rays, I got The Long Halloween, Batman The Long Halloween. This is one of my favorite graphic novels. I'm glad they finally made a movie adaptation of it. They did a damn good job. I love The Long Halloween storyline, and yeah, again, it's really great to see an animated adaptation of it. Check it out. Then I got Zack Snyder's Justice League. I saw this in the store the other day, and I was like, mine! I grabbed it and quickly bought it. Now I have both versions of the movie. I love this movie. It's one of my favorite in the DC Extended Universe. Right up there with Aquaman, Wonder Woman, and Shazam. Check it out. Pretty darn good. I'm glad to finally have it in my collection. Now I got both versions. That's it for CDs and Blu-rays. Also have this Ronnie James Dio Autobiography, Rainbow in the Dark. I talked about this a little bit already in my t-shirt video announcement. It's a great read. Definitely worth checking out, but I'll save my full thoughts until I actually review this. I'm going to give this its own individual video. Yeah, it's a great book. I've been waiting for it to come out for quite some time. Unfortunately, he did sadly pass away before he could finish it, so it only goes up to a certain point where his widow, Wendy Dio, and Mick Wall took over writing, and you can kind of tell where Dio's writing ends and theirs begins. It ends at 1986's Sacred Heart album when he first recruited guitarist Craig Goldie. So it's not the entire Dio story, but still definitely a great read and definitely worth checking out. And last but not least, I got some vinyls, and it's all Deep Purple. I've always been a huge fan of the band Deep Purple. I consider them a metal band, at least when they had, the Mark II lineup and beyond. I had a lot of their CDs, but I never had any on vinyl. I was a fan of Deep Purple way before I became a metalhead, back when I listened to mostly classic rock. Here's their first album, Shades of Deep Purple, with the Mark I lineup. This is when they had singer Rod Evans. And I think this is my favorite with their original lineup. It's not a metal album by any means. They wouldn't become like a metal band until this album, when the Mark II lineup, when they got singer Ian Gillan and bassist Roger Glover, who they replaced Rod Evans and Nick Simper, respectively. Great album. Then, of course, there's Fireball, another great album for the Mark II lineup. Ian Gillan's one of my favorite metal vocalists, and yes, again, I do consider them a metal band, very much so. Traditional heavy metal, like Black Sabbath and Judas Priest. Fireball's great. This, of course, is Machine Head, probably their most well-known album. It's got all their biggest hits on it. It's got Smoke on the Water and Highway Star and all that. Space Truckin'. Phenomenal album. Made in Japan, which is one of my favorite live albums. Deep Purple put on a hell of a show, and this recording is a testament to that. Glad to have this on vinyl. Who Do We Think That We Are? Another great album from the Mark II lineup. This has Woman from Tokyo, one of their biggest hits. And lots of really good songs. Then we have Burn, their first album with the Mark III lineup, which featured vocalist David Coverdale and bassist and co-lead vocalist Glenn Hughes, who I mentioned earlier when I was talking about Black Sabbath. This is a great, great album. I love it. Stormbringer, their second album with the Mark III lineup. Singer David Coverdale and bassist and co-vocalist Glenn Hughes. I don't like it as much as Burn, but it's got some really good songs on it nonetheless. I like it. After that, Richie Blackmore left the band and was replaced with guitarist Tommy Bolin, who died shortly after that. And then Deep Purple pretty much broke up. But they did record this live album before Richie left, live in London, which is great. I really like the way they do Smoke on the Water. David Coverdale and Glenn Hughes switch off on the vocals, and it sounds freaking awesome. Great live album. And then, so yeah, after, like I said, after Tommy Bolin died, the band pretty much broke up, but they reunited with the Mark II lineup, you know, with Ian Gillan on vocals and Roger Glover on bass, and most importantly, Richie Blackmore back on guitar. And they released this awesome album. This came out in, I believe, '84. Perfect Strangers. This is a great, great recording. I love it. Alright guys, well, I think that about does it for all my recent purchases. If I forgot anything that I got recently, I'll list them in the description below. Let me know if you guys got anything cool lately. And oh, and don't forget to join me later on this channel for the 4th episode of the Morbid Hour, the live stream I do with Sean Urshan and HorrorFan88. We're going to have Debbie Sue Voorhees from Friday the 13th Part 5 as part of our stream. She's going to answer any questions that they're in our live chat, so definitely be there for that. It's going to be very exciting. That's right, Deborah Voorhees herself, who played Tina in Friday the 13th Part 5, is going to be in the 4th episode of the Morbid Hour live stream, which is going to be at 6 o'clock later today. Be there. It's going to be a lot of fun. Alright guys, this has been Loathsome Lore episode 31. I'm Hellhound. Thank you for watching my late night spook show here on the Horror Metal channel. Later.